Hey, real quick, if you're listening to this show the week of June, well, this is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. This week ending on, I think, Friday, the 25th, Troy Built is having a leaf blower and string trimmer giveaway on Instagram. If you go to Instagram and look for Troy Built, there's a post with pictures of Aaron from the Impatient Gardener and myself. I'll also put a direct link to that post, but kind of a comment to win kind of thing. So go check that out. You could get a leaf blower and string trimmer. All right. Thank you. Hey, welcome to GardenFork Radio. My name is Eric. I am the host of the show. I'm here with my co-host Rick. Hello, sir.
Hello, my friend. How are you this morning?
No complaints. If you can get up and walk and talk, you're ahead of the game, right?
Yeah. I say if you wake up on this side of the grass, you got it made.
I think there should be more of an appreciation just for the little things in life. I'm trying to be better at being in the moment rather than letting my mind race around all the time. So I was looking at clouds this morning, and like last night, I was driving down the road in
Looking
the country.
At clouds.
And I thought, I've seen this view. I've driven that road for 20 years, and I'm like, wow, if you were experiencing this for the first time, it's a beautiful road. And I just realized that you just need to stop and look at the flowers,
Yeah, and appreciate what's going on around you.
And all right, we're going to go on a tangent already here. So welcome to the show. Thank you for downloading the show. But there is so much doom in the media, even though the vaccines work, we're getting out of the pandemic, there's still so much doom that there are still good things going on in the world. And I'm going to link to an article in the Washington Post. It's called The Inspired Life. And a young man, was a senior in high school, and he worked at the Waffle House. And on the day of his graduation, his manager knows that it's graduation for the local high school. He shows up for his shift, and manager's like, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at graduation." Again, single mother, no father in the picture. Is like, "Well, I don't have any money for the clothes. I don't have the money to rent a cap and gown, and I'd rather work at the Waffle House." So coworkers heard the story. People eating at the Waffle House heard that story, and they teamed up. One person went to the store and bought him clothes. One person ran to the high school and rented the cap and gown. The manager drove him to the graduation and took him to his graduation. And people in the restaurant contributed money to buy him the clothes. And that's a beautiful story.
It is. Did they dock him for his time?
Come on. So not all is GardenFork's all about, hey, there are good things in the world. So welcome, and that was a good thing.
There are lots of good things in the world, and people have been focused too long on the things that aren't going well, and really letting them override their judgment of what's going on that's good in the world. One of the things I recently experienced, as soon as She Who Must Be Obeyed got her vaccination, she was on the first thing smoking out of here.
Oh, yeah, you told us that, yeah.
Yeah. And she takes this road trip up to from Texas. She flew to Texas. She took Texas up to South Dakota with a friend to deliver some sheep herding dogs. And they had a flat. They drive the blue highways that are kind of parallel to the main through arteries,
right,
and the interstates. And they were driving the blue highway, and they had a flat. Well, here are these two old women who out there with this flat, and they struggle. And of course, the lug wrench isn't long enough to really get never is. And so, they're farm girls, farm and ranch girls. And so they walk the ditches on either side, well, one going forward, the other going back, until they find a length of pipe. And they slide the pipe over the lug wrench handle to give them more leverage, and one of them stands on it and breaks the lug nuts loose. And I said, that's a farm girl for you.
Yeah, we call that a cheater pipe. That works. I actually keep what's called a breaker bar in my car with the correct socket, a 6-sided socket for all my lug nuts. And I keep a 5-pound sledge with the spare tire because your metal wheel can fuse onto the the rotor, because it's usually disc brakes, and the rust basically fuses the two metals together, and you can jack up your car on the side of the road, but sometimes you can't get the tire off. You whack it with the 5-pound sledge and it comes off. So breaker bar with a 6-sided socket that fits your lug nut and a 5-pound sledge save you a lot of time.
Yeah. Now, see, there is a downside to living with a farm girl.
Yeah.
I will be sitting there and I am completely inept with sockets. I sit there and I try one and I try another and I try another until, I've got 30 sockets sitting out there until I find the right one. I finally figured out that there's a difference between metric and ISA. But, and she walks by and she glances at it. She says 9/16. And she's right. Now, she won't do it unless she has to, but she'll glance at it. That's 3/8, 9/16. She just has that eye, that gift. Whereas I sit there like a monkey, just twisting each one on and off until I get one that fits, sort of.
Well, that parlays into what we're going to talk about today.
The mind's eye, you're saying?
Yeah.
Imagination. Okay.
Do you like how I kind of got you off that rabbit hole and got you onto the subject?
That's right. You kept me from getting myself beat up when I leave the room here after she who must be obeyed hears me talk about her. Okay. You sent me this great article about
from the New York Times.
From the New York Times that I had never thought about. And I love articles about the mind and how it works that I had never thought about. It's called Can't See Pictures in Your Mind, You're Not Alone. And it's by Richard Chase. And why don't you kind of go ahead and talk about it a little bit?
Well, I was confused by it because my mind is incredibly visual. I think of numbers and math visually. I think of it in a graphic sense. And I'm always visualizing how I'm going to shoot videos or how I'm going to build something or fix something. And there are evidently people in the world that can't, their brains are wired such that they can't or don't do that.
I'm one of them. I had no idea that other people were different from me. Come on, Rick. I do not have. I have a very weak mind's eye. Occasionally I'll see a flash in kind of a grayscale or something, but I don't play movies in my head.
Wow.
And it now it explains what was my problem in school when I took physics, and I could more or less work the problems. But, these guys I was in class with, they'd say, okay, now if you take this, you put it over here and you turn it upside down, and what do you got? And I said, yeah, you got another damn problem. And they could, in their mind's eye, as they were manipulating the numbers and the equations, could actually turn, we were doing Newtonian physics, and they could turn blocks and spheres and stuff in their mind, or reverse the way they were rotating and that kind of thing, and actually kind of see it as they were manipulating the numbers. And I could see the numbers, I could do the problems more or less, but they didn't mean anything to me the way they spoke to those guys.
Yeah, like I'm not good at multiplication. But if you need to estimate, like estimating mortgage payments, I can just do it in my head.
Oh, wow.
And I think of it all as blocks and chunks, and it all breaks down into tens and hundreds and thousands for me, and just moving zeros. And I move them all visually.
And are they colored?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that you actually have something I was aware of that a lot of mathematicians like Feynman did. They actually could envision numbers as colors, and it's called synesthesia. And they would, as they were doing the equation or multiplying or whatever, each column, each number would change colors, and it helped them keep track of what they were doing so that they could do things in their head. A lot of poets, they think were synesthesiasts. I don't know if that's a word, where they could taste blue or they could hear orange. It had colors associated with it. And, or the other way, they could taste a one. Really strange little things. Sometimes they could smell numbers. I no idea what that means, but because I'm not wired that way. But it's just it's not anything wrong with you. It's just a difference in a way of being, and that's what this is. The medical term they've come up with this is aphantasia. Not being able, kind of having a blind mind's eye. And I do that. I can recall things. I can plan things. I can create things with words, but I just don't have if my wife is gone, she must be obeyed. I have trouble bringing a picture of her into my mind. I recognize her when I see her in the picture, but I cannot picture her in my mind.
Wow. So, and this is not a medical deficit. It's not a deficit. It's just a different way of being.
Well, and they think, and I found this, it helps me. One reason I think I've always been drawn to things like police work and the military and whatnot, where occasionally things get a little dicey, but it could be flying or driving a boat or anything else, or scuba diving. If you can visually see something terribly dangerous, imagine it happening, it flashes before you, it in some ways cripples you from being able to do what you have to do in the very moment. Yes. Probably a lot of doctors, particularly emergency room doctors and nurses, don't have that flash of all the things that could go wrong and, screwing up and that kind of thing. They can only deal with the problem in front of them, which makes them superior at what they do, because they're not crippled by the emotions that go with brilliant images.
Wow. I wonder if that might explain people with anxiety.
The opposite of this is hyperphantasia. Yeah, fantasia, hyperphantasia. People who are overly stimulated by pictures in their mind, and it sort of cripples them sometimes. Not all the time, but that it could have something to do with that. We're not doctors. We have to point out this is a terribly difficult thing to study because it requires people to self-report.
Yes.
They're just now getting to where they can do a few studies of imaging and whatnot. Apparently, they're doing something with, they have you imagine a bright white triangle, and people that are hyper or fantasious,
yep.
I can't come up with it, their pupils will contract just like they'd seen a really bright light, whereas those that are fantasists, whatever they are, they don't react. Their pupils don't react because they're not imagining a really bright light. So I don't know.
I'm going to read just a paragraph here.
Do you have to?
There's a cognitive neuroscientist, Joel Pearson, from the University of New South Wales, who has studied mental imagery since 2005, said hyperphantasia could go far beyond just having an active imagination. It's like having a very vivid dream and not being sure if it was real or not. People watch a movie and then they can watch it again in their mind, and it's indistinguishable. Wow. So that's not me. I know.
Yeah.
I think I could separate the two.
Well, and one of the things they think may be a benefit to being not being able to picture things in your mind like that is an ability to move on after a trauma. They think that may be one of the real benefits. which is true in my life, I think. I don't anguish and suffer over past defeats or disappointments, or I don't relive them the way my wife, who obviously has a very active inner eye, mind's eye, does. And so, I think I'm able to move on a little bit faster.
Ooh, I would like to be able to do that. I have these cringing, why did I do that dumb thing moments, and they are like watching a movie in my brain. And it physically hurts.
Yeah, and I notice it when it comes to past dogs we've known, and for me, they were here, we enjoy them, they're past, and I move on, and I get another dog. She kind of comes up with the, she gets, I call it nostalgic, but a little morose about, oh, I remember Sydney, she was such a sweet dog, and and you could just see her playing the images in her head, and she actually mourns them over again, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. So
Yeah.
we will link to this article. I thought that was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is something that Rick would like and we could talk about. So I like that.
I'm always interested in the mind and how it works and the things they're finding out about it, and also, but here's the thing: there's no right or wrong about this. It's just a way of being, and different minds. Actually, they're finding out most minds, no two minds are exactly alike, and that's good.
Much like yourself, I try and buy locally as much as possible. When I'm working on a project, I go down to my locally owned hardware store, which is one of the funnest places in the world to go crawl around and buy what I need there. If they don't have it, then I go to the big home improvement store, the orange store, the blue store. And if they don't have it, then I will go online and buy something. And sometimes I end up on Amazon. If you are shopping on Amazon, much like I do, would you consider using the GardenFork radio? There's horns honking outside. How am I supposed to do a promo with can you hear the horns honk? Anyway, here's what I'm thinking. If you're going to use Amazon, would you use the link in our show notes? It's amazon.com/shop/GardenFork. Amazon.com/shop/GardenFork. Start your shopping on our page at Amazon. We get a little finder's fee, helps us pay the bills, and you get a big thank you from me. All right? Amazon.com/shop/GardenFork. And the horns have stopped. No, it just went again. All right. See ya. I learned something this weekend. Would you like to know what it is?
Please.
There's no safety switch on your log splitter.
Oh, really? What did you do?
I got my hand stuck between the log and
Eric,
and the end of the log splitter.
Oh.
And my
How
friend
bad?
was running the hydraulic part,
Uh-huh.
And then when I started screaming, he had a mild freak out as to which way was forward and reverse on the hydraulic piston. And I got my finger back out. So,
Oh, were you wearing gloves?
yeah, I had gloves on, but that doesn't really help much when the log is smushing your finger.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So
I
it's
had
like,
not even thought about that. I did just now, going back to our main topic today, I did have a little frisson of, oh my God, and I get that occasionally around knives, blades of some sort. I'll get a quick flash of, oh boy, that's dangerous. I just got one of those with you, just a shiver, a frisson. A frisson.
yeah. Thankfully, it wasn't on the wedge end of the splitter. It's on the flat steel part that the log presses against as the piston's driving the wedge, and then the log hits the back. It looks like a super duper L bracket, essentially. It's out of steel. And my hand was in, I had put the log down, and my friend had engaged the piston to bring the wedge down sooner than I thought. And I didn't get my hand out of the way, and my one finger got stuck. And so I'm like I'm like, I'm calling my wife. I'm like, okay, we got to go to the emergency room, and so luckily, I think everyone should have these in the freezer. They are a flexible freezer pack. I used them. I got them from my physical therapist for my back, and they've been
Right.
sitting in there for years. But when they're frozen, they're still flexible.
Right.
It's a plastic. It looks like a ugly plastic white bag, but I wrapped my finger with that, and we drove down to the emergency room. And there's a new one actually, only about 15 minutes away. And by the time we got there, I'm like, I can bend my finger. It's not tingling. It's not searing pain. It's swelling up. It's not turning purple. The nail isn't broken. And then I thought, if we go into the emergency room, I'm gonna have to wait. I'm gonna have to go. They're gonna get an X-ray. They're gonna say, well, there's no skin break, and then they're gonna look at the X-ray and say there's nothing broken, and then they're gonna refer me to a hand expert. And I'm like, let's just go home and ice the thing. So that's what I
did. So has the tip of your finger turned black and blue?
No, it's pink. The finger's a little swollen. I'm not saying avoid the emergency room, okay? But the way American medicine works is it gets complicated way too quick, I think. But anyway,
it does.
I just took Advil or ibuprofen for the swelling, and I just iced it. And then at the drugstore, they have finger splints that are flexible metal with these Velcro strips. And so I wrapped it with a compression bandage, and then I put the splint on there to keep me from bending it.
Right.
And it's still swollen, but I can move it. And then the splint, I wear the splint more now so I don't jam my finger when I was walking the dogs and I opened up the front gate and I whacked my finger on the gate, and I'm like, oh, that's why you wear the splint,
Yeah.
So,
Put
but
a signpost here. Yeah.
You got to be really careful when you're working with one of your friends in a splitter or a piece of machinery like that, because sometimes there's a rhythm, but my friend I was working with, we don't quite have that rhythm down.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm just going to dial back he wanted to help split wood. I'm like, okay, well, we could do this. I actually really would prefer that one person put the log on and the other person run the machine. So
right. Well, how was it working this time?
It didn't work well because I got my finger smashed.
Oh, well, okay, but I mean, he was running the machine and you were putting the log on.
Well, we hadn't set a rhythm. We hadn't really set any. Okay, you're going to run this. I'm going to put the log on. It's almost to the point that if you could put the log down and then say clear, and then they could engage the splitter. But I mean, with other friends of mine, it just becomes like a choreographed dance that you keep repeating.
Yeah.
Put a log on, move your hands away. The other guy engages,
Right.
And then when you split the log, both logs, splits in half, and then you can decide whether you're going to split it again. And so anyway, just be careful.
Yeah, but it's funny because you're always putting on your chainsaw chaps and a helmet and the face guard and ear protection and wearing gloves and everything. I mean, you're Mr. Safety, and then to have that happen to you just shows even when you're really super conscious of things that can go wrong, you still get caught occasionally.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because in hindsight, I think a chainsaw is safer than the log splitter.
Well, maybe. I had a neighbor who was up in a tree trying to trim things and with a chainsaw and fell out of the tree, and the chainsaw landed about 3 feet from him when he fell, still running. And he was one of those guys that thought safeties were for sissies.
Yeah.
And had not wired, but he'd roped the
he disabled the brake.
He disabled the brake, and so the thing was still spinning as he fell through the air, holding it, and it just luckily landed away from him. We have a lot of accidents like that in my neighborhood. I'm a little worried about some of the people that live here. Guy, I think last summer, didn't want to pay someone to, and this guy's 70 years old, didn't want to pay somebody to power wash the outside of his 2-story house. And so he's up there doing it and falls off the ladder and lands on the patio table, glass table. And of course, it collapsed and it kind of saved him. But if there'd been an umbrella in it, it probably wouldn't have saved him. But
no, I tried to use the power washer on a extension ladder once, and I'll never do it again.
Well, I mean, but you're the guy, I keep coming back to this. They had the flamethrower on the roof hanging onto the gutter. An icy gutter.
That's in Brooklyn. We do everything in Brooklyn. So
yeah, a little frightening to think about that.
So we were talking before the show, and we will actually have an after show for the GardenFork patrons, but a kind of Apple earbuds as a kind of sort of hearing aid.
Yeah. I have flown airplanes, shotguns. I have done all kinds of things in my life. My hearing is kind of kaput now, particularly in some vocal ranges. And I have trouble at restaurants.
Me too.
They just get so loud and I can't hear voices anymore. And so I resort to trying to read lips, which I'm pretty good. It turns out most people do that when they can't hear well. And I bought a standard set of AirPods for the Apple iPhone. And I got to reading, and it turns out the AirPod Pros, which were about $100 more, have special circuitry built in them that you control through the accessibility tab on the phone, and you can tune out background noise, loud radios or music in the store or in the restaurant, and boost voices. And it tunes your AirPod Pros so that you can actually hear conversations. We were out last night, the first time we've eaten out since the pandemic, about 18 months. And I had read about this, and I went back and I turned in the ones I bought and got the AirPod Pros instead.
Oh, cool.
And they work like a champ. I mean, they're not real hearing aids, because hearing aid is a technical, legal definition. There are definitions for that, but they're a hearing assisting device. And you can fool around with this and actually boost your hearing in social situations or in noisy environments. And I just thought I'd let people know, because it's worked wonders for me.
That's fantastic. So I'm wondering, maybe you have the answers. Okay, so first of all, everyone, Apple has amazing accessibility built into its desktop and mobile software. And there's just a whole section in the settings instead of, if you can't use a mouse, you can use other different devices to use the keyboard and blah, blah, blah. So the sound that is being played into your ears, is that being picked up by a microphone in the phone or a microphone in the earbuds?
Well, you can do either, but the way I was running it was a microphone in the earbuds. There's one in each one that helps with noise canceling, because it picks up the noise and then it plays a canceling noise inside the earphone. It's kind of hard to picture if you don't know how
Well, I have a visual mind, so I know how it works. It plays, the noise has a certain sound wave, and the software plays the opposite of it, and it cancels it out. Exactly.
Very good. And so then you boost in certain ranges, and it's kind of directional too. And so it boosts in certain voice ranges or vocal ranges, sound ranges, or decreases in those ranges. And you can set it, and it works very, very well to enhance table conversation in a noisy environment.
How cool is that?
I love science. I love technology.
You know who we both love is GardenFork #1 fan, Kevin.
Ah, that's true. We haven't had Kevin on in a good while, have we?
No. I don't know if we've ever had Kevin on, to tell you the truth.
Wait a minute. Isn't this Kevin Little Black Dogs?
Right.
Yeah, he's been on.
Yes. Kevin is yelling at the podcast, right? Anyway, I was talking with...
I can't picture him in my mind, but I'm pretty sure he's been on.
He has two dogs that he does trainings with, and he is on Instagram with them.
So he's got, I think they're skipper keys, aren't they?
One is a small one. One looks like a German Shepherd, but isn't.
Okay. Is that a Malinois or
Kevin will tell us all this because he's yelling at us. Anyway, I was talking with Nicole in the previous podcast. Nicole was, wow, just amazing information with her. Very inspiring. 2 books, several kids, and then goes to the quarry and gets bluestone. But anyway, we're talking about trucks and the cost of them. And Kevin wrote, I just read that Ford is coming out with a new Ranger, which is the smaller pickup truck, starting at $20,000. It's built on a car chassis like the Ridgeline. So that's the Honda Ridgeline. And love the show, as he always says, Kevin. But trucks are incredibly expensive. Part of the reason, I think, is that I've read that trucks are the most profitable part of any car manufacturer's line, because
that's what I've read.
People just like to drive them. I sold my truck. I just didn't think I needed it. But it also reminds me, similarly, the Ford Falcon and the Ford Mustang were the same car chassis. If you can remember those cars. The
original, yeah. I actually drove a 61 Ford Falcon, 3 in the tree, for a good number of years.
They run forever. They made it in metal dashboard too, but.
Well, and no seat belts and that enormous steering wheel, because you need the leverage to move that manual steering around. Have you seen that the Ford has got the all new electric F-150s coming out?
Yes. Yeah, I'm seriously looking at, if anyone owns an electric car, would you let me know? radio@gardenfork.tv. That's our next car.
One of the things that really attracted me about that is it can provide 15 kilowatts out. So you can power your house temporarily, or at least parts of your house, with the energy in your Ford truck. Wow. Or if you're on a job site, you can power equipment using the battery on the Ford. My Prius Prime, the Prime part is extra battery in it. And we get about 30 miles on just straight electricity before the engine kicks in, and then the hybrid system takes over. Mm-hmm. And we have gone so long on a tank of gasoline that I've thought about putting in gas stabilizer. Yes. Because we don't drive that much, really. So
you can't really ruin the gas by adding stabilizer. Like I keep 2 5-gallon plastic cans. What are they? Those approved annoying gas cans in my garage. And I put stabilizer in there before I add the gas at the pump. And then sometimes I'm like, did I add the stabilizer? So I just put more in it. It's 2 ounces for 5 gallons, I believe, is the one I use. But yeah, and also I become a fan of Seafoam, which absorbs water in your small engines. So yeah, have at that. I mean, for cars, it would be Heat, HEET. It comes in a yellow plastic bottle. It's in the Northeast, you have to use it in the winter because you don't want your fuel lines freezing. But I would definitely do gas stabilizer.
Yeah, but we hardly burn any gas at all because we don't go very far. Maybe it's just because we're old and retired. I don't know, with the pandemic, we pretty much stayed close to home.
Would you be interested in kind of getting some behind the scenes photos and thoughts and just that kind of stuff that I don't really feel comfortable putting out on social media, but I still want to share with like the GardenFork crew? You can do that if you want to become a patron of GardenFork. It's a really easy thing to do. I ask for $5 a month if you want to support the show here and also the videos. That's like a fancy cup of coffee a month, you know? What do you think? In return, I post, basically if I take a picture of something, I'm like, oh, maybe the patrons be interested. I post it to the app. You also get an email as well with a picture of it. Or if I do a little recording, all the after shows that we do on GardenFork Radio, just the behind the scenes stuff and knowing that you're kind of like the Medici family to me. You are making this all happen, which I really appreciate. So more information about that is in the show notes below, or go to patreon.com/GardenFork. All right. Thank you again. Oh, one more thing. We have some new patrons I wanted to thank. It's Carrie, Katie, Natalie, and Mike P. They are all now getting the behind the scenes stuff. Kind of like the picture of my finger after I smashed it in the log splitter. All right, back to the show.
My tomatoes and my okra are just growing like mad. The best crops I'm going to probably ever had up to this point.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I know that tomatoes have been, I just stopped growing tomatoes. I just buy them from the farm stand down the road.
Why is that?
In our little town, it's called the blight. I don't know what the technical term is, but I think it's a fungus that comes up from southern New England. They're like, oh, the blight has come through the town. Then it's like, oh, it comes up on the wind. I'm like, okay, but maybe it's in my soil. But I also don't get a lot of wind in my yard because I'm surrounded by, I have a very small yard surrounded by trees. So there's not a lot of air exchange. It stays the moisture kind of hugs the ground. And I think that contributes to the fungus.
We have blight here, particularly late blight, is in the soil. It's a soil-borne fungus. And I'm beating it. And you know what? I said I was making a video. Do you remember me saying that last time?
Yeah. I want to buy that little camera you have.
Yeah. I'm not making a video because I managed to delete all my video files accidentally when I was transferring them from the camera to the computer, and it said delete. And I said, sure. And then boy, it all went off the camera. I thought I was just deleting it off the camera, but I deleted everything.
Oops.
So anyway, I'm working on this system, and so far it's turning out really good. You put down a permeable ground cloth that water and air will pass through, but not light so much. And you take your torch. This is the part that will appeal to you because you get to burn a hole in something.
Yeah.
You burn holes in that plastic cloth, and it seals the edges, and it makes an opening in the center. I take an auger attached to my drill and auger out a hole in the ground for the tomatoes. Drop in some magnesium salt, which is Epsom salt, and some pellets of long-lasting fertilizer, plant the tomato in it, and then water at the ground level so that the leaves and foliage never get wet. And by keeping the leaves from touching the soil, so far I've been pretty successful at keeping the blight at bay.
Wow. Good for you.
So it's working so far. Although I went out there and I've got some yellow leaves, and I'm looking at them. They're yellow, and I'm looking at them with a jaundiced eye.
All right. So we don't have any viewer mail except for Kevin. So if you would like to write us, it's radio@gardenfork.tv. And
I am sure Kevin has been on. I thought we talked about cameras at one point.
Kevin, Kevin, anyway, you were invited on the show, so.
We'd love to have you, Kevin.
All right, so we have had a successful show here. And I kind of forgot what we say at the end of the show. But anyway, go out and do cool stuff. There is good news in the world, okay? Just stop watching all that bad news and think about the good stuff in your neighborhood and your world.
Yeah, and there's plenty of it.
Yay. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rick.
Okay, well, thank you, my friend. You guys have a great day.
GardenFork Radio is produced by GardenFork Media LLC in Brooklyn, New York. Our producer is Sean O'Neill. If you need an amazing podcast producer, visit Sean's site, SeanInBrooklyn.com. That's Sean, SEAN, in Brooklyn.com. Our executive producer is Jimmy Goose. For more information about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes, visit hollowbooks.com. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.